Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Chad Blackman podcast. If this is your first time with us, this podcast is all about helping you know, love, and defend the Word. Today, I want to show you what I think is one of the coolest Christian Jedi mind tricks, and I hope that it serves you and encourages you immensely as you continue to walk with the Lord. Let's check this out. Well, here's what I wanted to do today. I wanted to expound a little bit on a previous podcast I did. In an earlier episode, I talked about one of the most helpful spiritual weapons that a Christian can possess. And what that is knowing the moral argument for God. This, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful weapons in the Christian's arsenal to help spot lies, to help spot hollow attacks on Christianity, and then to really build the faith, to really encourage your own heart and mind in the Christian walk. Today, what I wanted to do is show you practically how the moral argument is in many ways like a Jedi mind trick. If you've never watched Star Wars and don't know what that refers to, in the Star Wars movies, Jedis have this ability, this power with the Force to be able to convince people of things that they were never able to convince them otherwise. And I think this is kind of what the moral argument does. And I want to try to take a couple of real life examples. These are things you're going to see on TikTok, on social media, your coworker, your family member, your neighbor, those people that tend to be hostile to Christianity. They're going to raise issues like this. And these are very challenging questions that oftentimes catch the Christian off balance. I want to show you how the moral argument puts you back kind of on the high ground and gives you an ability here to really go after their argument in a pretty powerful way. So let's look at a couple of real life objections that you're going to hear that the moral argument really Jedi mind tricks, that it just flips upside down on its head. The first one, you're going to hear an argument that goes like this. It is the problem of evil. You will hear skeptics, you will hear people who are deconstructing from their faith. They'll raise this question: how could a good God who is all-powerful and loving allow there to be evil in the world? They will raise this question, and in fairness, this is probably one of the hardest questions that a Christian could wrestle with because it hits on a lot of levels. It hits on a really difficult intellectual level, but then what's even more challenging with this kind of issue is the fact that most of the time they're asking this question from a position of pain. They're asking this question from a position of hurt. And so probably the best way to go about this question is to first love this person, ask questions about what they're going through, what kind of season of life they're in right now, if they're currently in a season of hurt and pain, to ask a lot of questions and listen really well. Because nothing pours salt in the wound like giving a lot of intellectual, philosophical answers to a soul that is hurting, to a soul that is mourning. That's not what that person needs. And yet there are people who may be in a relatively comfortable time of life, and yet they're intellectually struggling with this question. So let me show you here how the moral argument really goes to work on this. When a person says, how could a good God allow evil in the world? There are a ton of assumptions that are buried into that statement. They are saying in that statement, there is a standard of good and evil, a standard of right and wrong that I can judge the world and judge God by. And what I see out in the world is that there's real objective evil, and you're claiming that this God of yours is good, is objectively good. But there's an incongruency here. I don't see how that good God can allow the real objective evil that's in the world. Okay? This raises the question, and this is how the Christian should respond. This is the Jedi mind trick. Where did you get your standard of right and wrong? By what standard are you able to tell that the world is evil? Where did this standard come from? Because if you're using this argument to say God can't exist, that puts you then into the reality that the universe is here by a giant cosmic accident. There is no greater future for mankind. We are just simply molecules in motion. We are the product of time and chance acting upon matter. We are just high-functioning, fizzing carbon molecules. That's really all we are. So how do you know then that what you're looking out onto the world is evil? Where did you get your standard from to judge that these things are evil? Because when you claim that a good God would not allow there to be evil in the world, you're using objective moral categories. And then what you have to do is provide the source for where you get those objective moral categories. And this is what I love about this argument. It takes this really biting, powerful attack against Christianity, and as you feel it kind of pushing you back on your heels, this allows you now to counter right back and say, well, wait a minute, where did you even get your standard by which you can say things are objectively evil? And that immediately then puts the skeptic into the hot seat. And we can do this over and over and over. One of the more common arguments you're going to hear against Christianity right now is that the Bible discriminates against gay people. The Bible encourages Christians to be discriminatory against gay people. It preaches hatred towards the LGBTQ community. Therefore, Christianity should be abolished. It's an ancient relic. It does not advance a free, loving society. It actually leads people more towards hatred. And at the root of this critique is that discrimination, hatred, any kind of like isolation from a group is bad. Now, I would say that Christianity doesn't lead towards that. It clearly calls homosexuality a sin, but it also calls us to pray for those who persecute us, to love those that the world would call our enemies. It calls us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, and that command is second in order to only loving God. So I would contend, no, the Bible doesn't really do that. That's a caricature, but I want to show you how the moral argument starts to go to work on this kind of attack. When people say, well, the Bible preaches discrimination against gay people, this is where you can start. Well, why is discrimination even bad? Where did you get the idea that discrimination is even bad? Please tell me where you came up with the objective binding standard that discrimination is bad. Because if there is no God, that we answer to, you're operating in a purely naturalistic worldview. Your worldview says that all we are is time, chance, and matter. All we are is molecules and matter in motion. There's no greater future for us. There's no greater purpose for us. We live, we die, that's it. Who ultimately cares if we love people and if we treat people with respect? So in your very own atheistic worldview, where are you coming up with the idea that discrimination is bad? Where did you get this objective standard that treating people in an unfair way is morally wrong? You have to tell me where you're getting that idea first. I hope you can see how this kind of Jedi mind tricks, all of these objections that get painted towards us, all of these razor-sharp critiques that come against Christianity, the moral argument does a really good job flipping it right around on them. And then not only can we flip it, then we can provide, no, the Bible doesn't actually promote discrimination. It calls us, we are duty bound by the scriptures to pray, love, and care for those that we disagree with. Do Christians always do that well? Of course not. We could do far, far better in that arena. However, this is an important thing to consider, an important truth to consider here. All kinds of other claims that the moral argument undermines. You'll hear this on TikTok. You'll hear this out in the world on social media, in your neighborhoods, at your places of business and work. You'll hear an argument that goes like this. Well, Christianity has been the cause of so many different wars. Christianity has been the cause of slavery, the The slave owners in the American South used to use the Bible to justify slavery. How could you follow a book that preaches those kinds of things? The Bible has advocated for the oppression and for the control of women. How could you follow a book that follows something like this? And once again, these arguments, man, are really sharp. They can kind of catch us and put us back on our heels. Here's where the moral argument flips it right back around. The Jedi mind trick. Well, when you say that the Bible preaches about war and condones war, why is war even a bad thing? Please tell me, if there is no God, why are you saying that war is even an objectively bad thing? Because if there is no God, what it seems only logical to say is that it's your opinion that war is bad, but your opinion is no more valid than my opinion. Your opinion that war is bad is no more valid or true or objective or binding than the person who says, no, war is good. It's no better for a person to live till they're 80 years old, full of life, or to die at 25 in some war. Everybody's ultimately going to die. Everybody ends up back into dust. There's no greater purpose. There's no greater meaning for us. All we are is high-functioning stardust. So please tell me, why is war actually a bad thing? Where did you get this standard from, that war is bad? The oppression of women. Once again, tell me, where did you get that standard from? When it comes to slavery, where did you get this standard that slavery is bad? Where did you come up with that? Because if you're operating in a purely atheistic worldview, all you can say is it's just your opinion. It's not objective. It's not binding on humanity. It's just your own opinion. Because there's no God that we're ultimately accountable to. So who cares if one sack of carbon enslaves another sack of carbon? Who cares if one collection of carbon molecules interacts and pushes up against another group of carbon molecules? They're ultimately both going to die. They don't account to any higher authority or judge. Who cares? Where did you come up with this idea that these things are bad? And this is what the Christian is trying to show with the moral argument. You came up with these things. You know that these things are wrong because God has written his law into your hearts. You're made in his image. And the Bible does not condone all of the horrible wars that have been done in the past. The heart of Christianity is a man dying on the cross for his enemies, praying that God would forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. When Peter, Jesus' disciple, takes a sword out to kill a guy who's coming to arrest Jesus, Jesus tells Peter, put your sword away. This is not how the kingdom spreads. You have to say that these people who have engaged in war were not following Christ properly. You have to say that people who were oppressive to women are not following the scriptures the way that they've been laid out. Jesus showed himself first and foremost, not to his men disciples, to his women disciples. The New Testament was incredibly subversive to Roman culture in the way that it elevated women as being co-heirs, co-image bearers with God. You cannot say that people who have used and twisted the Bible to oppress and hold women down are following the scriptures accurately. Same thing with slavery. The Bible does talk about slavery all over the place, and the slavery in biblical times looked very, very different from the atrocity of the American South. In the scriptures, men and women worked for a period of time. Slavery was not based on their skin color. It was simply an economic system. They would work for a while, much like indentured servitudes, and then they could buy their freedom. It was not based on a racial system predicated on a lot of evolutionary theory that said black people are subhuman. They're subpar from the white race. That is not what the scriptures are saying. The scriptures hold the dignity of mankind. The scriptures hold the beauty and the unbelievable image-bearing nature that humans have. And it's because of that, because of that we have this instinct. We know when things are genuinely right and they're genuinely wrong. And we can have that standard of genuine right and wrong because there is a transcendent law giver. There is one whom has given these laws to us. All goodness flows from his very nature, and he is the grounding. He is the basis. He is where we get the standard from. He is that firm foundation we can build our moral laws off of. I think C.S. Lewis just gave a great illustration, and we'll end with this. He explained the moral law can be it can be best understood when you think of a scenario you might get put into. Say you're driving down the street and you come across a bridge, and down in the water you see somebody who's drowning. You're going to feel two instincts that arise in you. Instinct A will be to just keep on driving. You don't want to risk your own harm. You don't want to risk your own danger. You may have kids in the car. You've got somewhere to be. Surely someone else will save them. And maybe you don't even know he's really drowning. It could be just he could be faking it and just having fun. And so instinct A is going to be kind of self-preservation, if you will. And then another instinct's going to arise, instinct B. And instinct B is going to say, no, you need to go save him. That's your fellow human. You need to go help him. You need to get down there and risk your own safety and your own personal time to help this fellow human. Now, what C.S. Lewis points out is that if the evolutionary worldview is true, both of those instincts can arise, and instinct A is no better than instinct B. There's nothing to adjudicate. There's nothing to show that instinct A is any better than instinct B, and you can't say instinct B is better than instinct A. What he then points out, though, is that in almost every normal functioning human, there will be a third voice that's further back. There will be another voice or another thought that's higher and further back, and that voice will say, you need to follow instinct B. That voice will say, go help your fellow man. And what the Christian's trying to say is we have to account for where that came from. Because if all we are is just high-functioning carbon, the product of a massive cosmic explosion 14 billion years ago, it's really, really hard to explain where that third voice came from. It's really hard to explain, while even as you're listening to this, you probably felt in your heart, it's right to go try and save that person. The moral argument for God says the only real plausible explanation is that someone outside of us has given these moral codes and duties and laws to us, and that is the best explanation. So I hope that this helped you. I hope that this makes kind of a heavy, philosophical, deep idea. I hope it makes it a little bit more clear. I hope it makes it more practical. I hope this becomes a tool that you can use. I hope this becomes something that you can put into the tool belt. And as you're talking with coworkers, as you're scrolling through social media and these things pop up, this will be a tool you can pull out and use with respect and gentleness, but a tool nonetheless that you can go, well, wait a minute. It seems like you're talking about objective moral values and duties. Where did you get your standard for objective moral values and duties? Because if you're going to indict Christianity on objective charges, you need to show me, where did you get the standard from? So I hope this helps. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you on the next podcast. God bless.